MKUltra. MKUltra was a series of human experiments conducted by the CIA aimed at discovering and developing drugs and procedures to be used in interrogations to weaken a person's resistance and force confessions through mind control. There remain doubts about whether this operation has ended or continues to this day. The program engaged in many illegal activities, including using US and Canadian citizens as test subjects, leading to controversies about its legitimacy. These experiments involved the covert administration of drugs, especially LSD, and other chemicals, hypnosis, sensory deprivation, isolation, verbal and sexual abuse, and other forms of torture. Operation Mockingbird. Operation Mockingbird began in the 1950s with the aim of using journalists and media to spread propaganda and manipulate public opinion. The CIA recruited reporters from leading US media outlets, paid them, and provided information to be presented in a favorable light. As a result, the agency could influence public opinion and political events while remaining behind the scenes. The operation was exposed in the 1970s during congressional investigations. Operation Northwoods. Operation Northwoods was a proposed false flag operation in which CIA operatives were to plan and execute terrorist acts against American military and civilian targets, blame the Cuban government, and use them to justify a war against Cuba. The document outlined possibilities such as remotely controlling civilian aircraft that would be secretly repainted as U.S. Air Force planes, fabricating the shooting down of a U.S. Air Force fighter near Cuba's coast, assassinating Cuban immigrants, sinking boats with Cuban refugees in the open sea, and bombing an American ship. Ultimately, the proposals were rejected by President John F. Kennedy. Operation Phoenix. Developed during the Vietnam War with the participation of American, Australian, and South Vietnamese military forces, the Phoenix program lasted from 1967 to 1972. Its goal was to identify and eliminate the Viet Cong through espionage, assassinations, torture, capture, counterterrorism operations, and interrogations. The CIA described it as a set of programs aimed at attacking and destroying the political infrastructure of Vietnam. During the Phoenix program, 81,740 individuals suspected of belonging to the Viet Cong were neutralized. This included the number of neutral civilians killed, the use of torture and other coercive methods, and the program's exploitation for personal and political purposes. Despite the controversy, the program was very effective in suppressing Vietnam's political and revolutionary activities. Public disclosure of the program led to significant criticism, including congressional hearings in the United States, ultimately forcing the CIA to shut it down. Operation Cyclone. Operation Cyclone was the code name for the program to arm and finance Afghan mujahideen in Afghanistan from 1979 to 1992, both before and during the Soviet military intervention. The program primarily supported militant Islamic groups fighting against the Soviet-aligned Democratic Republic of Afghanistan. Operation Cyclone was one of the longest and most expensive covert CIA operations. Funding officially began at $695,000 in mid-1979, sharply increasing to $20 to $30 million per year in 1980, and grew to $630 million per year in 1987, making it the largest bequest for any insurgent movement in the Third World. Funding continued after the Soviet troops withdrew in 1989, and as Mujahideen continued to fight against the armed forces of the Democratic Republic of Afghanistan during the First Afghan Civil War. Operation Neptune Spear. Osama bin Laden, the founder and first leader of the Islamist group Al-Qaeda, was shot in his compound in Abbottabad, Pakistan by Navy SEALs from the United States Naval Special Warfare Development Group, also known as SEAL Team 6. The success of the operation marked the end of a nearly decade-long hunt for bin Laden, who had orchestrated the September 11th attacks on the United States. The raid was supported by over 90% of the American public, praised by the United Nations, NATO, the European Union, and numerous governments, but condemned by others, including two-thirds of the Pakistani public. The legal and ethical aspects of the killing, such as the failure to capture him alive despite him being unarmed, were controversial. Additionally, the decision not to release any photographs or DNA evidence of bin Laden's death was also contentious. Operation Gold. Operation Gold was a joint CIA and MI6 operation in the 1950s aimed at tapping into the landline communications of the Soviet Army headquarters in Berlin through a tunnel located in the Soviet-occupied zone. This plan was activated in 1954 due to fears that the Soviet Union might launch a nuclear attack at any moment, as they had already detonated a hydrogen bomb in August 1953 as part of their atomic bomb project. Construction of the tunnel began in September 1954 and was completed in 8 months. The Americans recorded about 90,000 messages over a year. The Soviet authorities were informed about Operation Gold from the beginning by their mole, George Blake, but decided not to discover the tunnel until April 21, 1956, to protect Blake from exposure. Operation Ajax. The 1953 Iranian group, orchestrated by the USA and the UK, resulted in the overthrow of elected Prime Minister Mohammad Mossadegh by the Iranian army in favor of strengthening the monarchical rule of Shah Mohammad Reza Pahlavi. This took place on August 19, 1953, and one of the main goals of the coup was to protect British oil interests in Iran. Considering Mossadegh's unyielding and fearing the growing influence of the Communist Party, it was decided to overthrow the Iranian government. After the coup, a government was formed headed by General Fazlollah Zahedi, which allowed Reza Pahlavi to rule more firmly as a monarch. He heavily relied on US support to maintain power. According to declassified CIA documents and records, some of the most dangerous mobsters in Tehran were hired by the CIA to organize pro-Shah riots on August 19th. Other individuals paid by the CIA were brought into Tehran by bus and truck, taking over the city's streets. The coup restored the Shah's power, and he continued to rule Iran for the next 26 years as a pro-Western monarch until he was overthrown by the Iranian Revolution of 1979. In August 2013, the US government officially acknowledged the role of the USA in the coup, releasing numerous previously classified government documents indicating that the USA was responsible for both planning and executing the coup. According to American journalist Stephen Kinzer, the operation included false flag attacks, paid protesters, provocations, bribing Iranian politicians and high-ranking security and military officials, and pro-coup propaganda.